Welcome to Orgasmica, the podcast where we explore the sacred, sensual, and transformative. I'm Virginia Novello, actress, producer, and tantric coach, and an eternal seeker of truth and connection. Here, we dive deep into the intersection of sexuality, creativity, and healing. From raw, honest conversations to practical tools for empowerment, this is the space to reconnect with your body, your desires, and your joy. Whether you're here to heal, learn, or just to feel inspired, you are in the right place. Let's awaken the magic within. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Oh my God, today I am a little starstruck. I'm a little excited. I'm overly excited because today I have Rebecca Campbell in the podcast. I cannot believe this. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, Virginia, so good to be here with you.
Oh my God, so good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. You are a big inspiration of why I have this podcast. For the people that don't know, I worked for a little bit in your podcast.
Yeah.
And it was just such a beautiful inspiration, the way you do your thing, the way you express yourself. And I found out about you through your oracle cards, who are unbelievable people. If you haven't seen them, you need to go and see them. Like probably all of my friends have bought them because I'm like, you need to see these cards. They're magical and amazing. And then that dived me into your books.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got connected through you, and I was able to work for you. That was like such a beautiful experience. And so after working on your podcast, I was like, I think I can do this. It was
Well,
like,
that's amazing. Oh, I didn't know that. That's so good.
it was
When
like, oh my
when our
God.
friend Amy told me that you had a podcast, I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. You'd be
Oh
so
my
good at
God,
it.
yeah, you guys were so amazing. And I felt like I went to podcast school at the same time that I was working with you. So I was like,
So
okay, I
good.
can do this after that. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really, really honored. I've been listening nonstop to your amazing book, which the title is just one of the best titles that I've ever heard in a book. It's Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life is It. And I've been listening to it. You all have to like buy it, read it, listen to it. Your voice is so amazing. So I love to have you in my ear. But thank you so much for birthing this book. It has so much beautiful insights and so many of the things that little pockets of it I've known through your podcast, but through listen to it in this like beautiful journey, and the way that you express all of this is unbelievable and such a gift to every single person that want to connect to themselves, and that is going to this like deep dark journey of the soul. You feel so held by it. I feel like collectively we're going through something, and so I
Yeah.
think it's the perfect timing for this book, and for all of us to feel held while we go through it in the collective, whether it's individually or collective. I think definitely we're going through it as a collective. So
Both. Yeah, both
yeah.
for sure.
Right. So how did this come about, this book? I have so many questions, but I want to start with that.
Well, I think I've written, this is my fourth book. So I think I was contracted to write a book, and this title has changed like literally like about 6 times in that period, and it was meant to be out a lot sooner than it was, but it was just clear that it was like part of like a bigger arc, and other projects just kept on going in front of it because the timing just wasn't right. So at first it was called The Initiation, and then Returning was another title. The Mystery School of Nature was another one, and then Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life is It. And it's the only book I've written where I haven't really known what I was writing while I was writing it. And yet like the connection with the energy of the book was so strong. So the writing came easy, but it just came at its own time. I had so much more that I'd written that didn't end up in the book because it was just too much. But it was really written in a period of like great change in myself as well as great change in the world. I also I really connected to the energy of it. I was in my Bhakti yoga training, kirtan teacher training, and I had a spontaneous mystical experience. I did not expect it to happen. And I connected to the energy of the book during that. And that energy really changed everything within me, like right down to the cells. But it took a long time for me to like stabilize the energy in my system. And yeah, I don't know if you've been through a period like that before where it's like, they say even a spontaneous awakening, or perhaps especially a spontaneous awakening, takes a long time to properly integrate. And I think that this book like holds that energy. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I do have that experience of kind of like creating something and you don't know what kind of form it is going to take.
Mm.
My movie took 9 years to be
Oh my
birthed.
gosh.
It's been like a
So
long journey.
huge. That's so huge.
Yeah, it was like a long journey, but then I felt like at some point it had its own entity. I do feel like then it has its own
Yeah.
entity, creativity, these uh, things that want to come through in forms of
Yeah.
books or podcasts or art or
Yeah.
movies, they have their own entity and then they have their own journey, and you
Yeah.
cannot push them into
Yes.
an earlier thing. You have to kind of let them come into the right time. And I didn't understand
Yeah.
that. For a long time, I was like pushing, like the way we're taught, we're taught
Yeah.
not to be necessarily the feminine of like letting things happen, but like
Mm.
really just let's force, let's keep working on it. And
Mm.
like, we need to make it happen by this deadline and that deadline and all these deadlines all over
Mm.
the place. And then there was a point where I let it go and I was like, it's going to come out when it's going to come out. And it kind of came
Mm.
out in the perfect moment as to like what's happening with immigration in this country right now.
Mm.
And so it's like people are seeing themselves and reflected in a different way.
Mm.
And
So
so
it's the
I
perfect timing.
right? It's like
Yeah.
all creative things have the perfect timing, and
Yeah.
books like yours that have been like simmering in this. There's
Mm.
certain integrations that you have to kind of catch up to
Mm.
into the messaging of what's going on. Because this
Mm.
entity, I feel like it's just source, and so
Mm.
you kind of our humanness has to catch up onto it in order sometimes to
Mm.
birth it in that kind of way.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that is like the kind of the challenge of the artist, right? To first of all trust what we're receiving. And because often we're receiving it before the consciousness is there. And then trust the timing of that coming out into the world. I remember when I first was writing, like when I was writing my first book. And I knew, like, I really got the memo of, like, the only difference between a professional and an amateur is the professional shows up and writes every day. So I was doing that. But when I submitted it to what would end up being my publisher, but I didn't know if it was or not, I actually entered a competition and my book got published as a result of that. But I had been writing every day. And then when I submitted, I stopped writing because I was all of a sudden, like, waiting to hear if I got it, which and it kind of lasted about, I don't know if it was a few weeks or just over a month or something, but it was a period of time where I wasn't showing up like a professional like I did before. And I really got, oh my God, like I have to trust that my book has a path of its own. And it's a mystery to me what that path is. And maybe that particular publisher or whatever, agent or whatever it is going to be part of that path. Or maybe it's not. But I think as the artist, like it really does like require both the discipline of showing up and the faith in that path existing. It's quite a
Surrender,
thing.
and you speak a little bit about surrender in your book. You know there
Mm,
is this part of like surrendering. How do you mix them both? Because I think that is one of the hardest things to do, of
mm,
like knowing when to show up, how to show up,
mm,
and then knowing when to surrender, because we are not taught how to surrender.
mm.
I've never got taught that. I was taught to just keep moving,
Yeah.
and surrender was actually a bad word, in my culture.
Mm,
In
mm,
Mexico is like, no, you don't know. My dad was like, never, ever,
mm.
ever give up. Like you don't.
Yeah.
So surrender had a different meaning, and I didn't
Mm,
understand what surrender really meant, but it was kind of
mm,
it was more, I felt it in my body when I was like, this is what
mm.
surrender feels like. I'm not giving up. I'm just giving in, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, you're letting go, loosening your grip, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think for me, when I really got surrender, or that like how to tell like the subtle difference of like what's required when, and we might be like, when we're in a phase of our life, we might be like called to surrender in one part and, proceed ahead with another. But I think for me, when I started like properly working with the seasons and looking at nature in particular, and asking myself, okay, what season am I in this area of my life, for example, that kind of helped me through those like I call them the darker feminine months of autumn or fall in the States and winter. Like they require a letting go and a slowing down, a rest, a ultimate surrender. But if you know the medicine of the seasons is that if you properly give yourself the winter, come spring, those new shoots are going to come up. I'm here in Glastonbury today. It's spring equinox on the day of us recording this. And like, oh my God, literally in the past week, all of the flowers have just like burst through. The daffodils are like trumpets everywhere, like everywhere. And it's like, of course they were going to come back. But when you're in winter, it's easy to be like, the sun is never going to shine again.
Done.
Yeah, exactly.
Dark times.
Exactly.
Never gonna leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's something that the mystic in you, I love that, because you have so many facets. You have,
Mm,
the mother, the mystic, the artist, and the teacher. And I love how you are really, really in tune with the seasons and you speak about that
mm,
so much.
mm,
Was that always like that? And how did
mm,
you connect that throughly? There's one thing understanding it, right? And there's another thing understanding it somatically
mm.
in a way that we are
Yeah.
like, I feel myself going in there and trusting that I will bloom again, right?
Yeah,
How did
so
you connect
true.
that?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I think I've always felt connected to nature. And I definitely know that when I was younger, I was in tune with my creativity when I was in nature. I always knew that, but I didn't know anything about seasonal living or anything like that. When I was in London, like I like prayed for guidance. I knew I wanted to write, but I just didn't know what about. And I was also like a whole lot of my life had just like crumbled as well, and I just felt like I was like living a life that didn't fit my soul. And I prayed for guidance, and it was like basically follow what lights you up. And when I answered that, my answer was flowers, and I was really surprised by that answer and kind of let down because I'm like, it felt really like trivial, like
Right.
pretty flowers or whatever.
Needed something bigger.
Yeah, exactly. But I knew to trust intuition by then. And so I did. And so what I ended up doing is buying myself flowers once a week. And then I discovered the rose and the peony. And then so I researched where roses were in London, where I was living at the time. And I discovered Regent's Park Rose Garden, which has literally like 40,000 David Austin, a certain type of rose flowers there. It's like stunning. And that's where I would walk every day and I would do my writing. And so the flowers really inspired me. So that was like the gateway at first. Around the same time when I was in Notting Hill, I had a Kundalini awakening. I didn't know what that was really. It was very ecstatic. It was a very positive experience. That one, I've had others that have been a lot harder, but this particular one was very like, it was orgasmic, it was ecstatic, it was like the real like upward motion. And I, as well as having like the physical symptoms of like shaking and teeth chattering and things like that, when I would walk in nature, I would see the codes of nature during this period. It didn't last for a long time, but it was like something was awoken within me. And so I think that was really like the big door opener of really like being like, nature is the way. And I think I have studied shamanism, so that kind of like helped me in a more structured way understand what I had experienced through that direct experience. And then I ended up moving to Glastonbury, where I live now, which is an amazing town it's in the UK, and it is very much in reverence to the goddess, in reverence to like the Celtic wheel of the year. So I was just at the Chalice Well, it was spring equinox, we all gathered about an equinox is essentially the moment in between the solstices. So they call it equal light, equal dark, meaning night and day, equal sunlight and nighttime. But this town is, I don't know any other place, particularly here in this part of the world where I live, where it really is in reverence to those more ancient Celtic ways or ancestral ways. So yeah, so that has really taught, like I've learned a lot from living here too about like how, it's just the most normal thing in the world. Like, just the sacred's here. It's always been here. It's like right here. Yeah.
Inside and inside of us. I
Mm,
think for me, it really
mm.
changed when I had to change it because of my hormones. And I
Oh,
had to
yeah.
really like slow down because my cortisol was like up in the sky
Yeah.
around like 6 years ago. And it really, really messed me up with everything with my sexuality. Like I got
Mm.
closed off, like my libido went down into the hill.
Let's tell me about that, because yeah, tell me, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Because I
it was like,
remember when I first met you, I was
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, because you're just like, to me, like, it's why I think, because we met in an interview and I was like, yeah, she's not right for this. I just want to be around Virginia. She's just like so alive, and your energy is so alive. And so I'm so interested in, because I know you follow a Tantra path, am I right?
Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
tell me, because my libido has gone down a lot, and it was after I had my son, and I speak about this in the book. I went through a lot of ancestral collective healing, and it felt like the Kundalini rising in reverse in a way. And not like it was a particularly negative thing, but it was clearing, and it wasn't easy. It was but that coincided with libido going down.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
tell me your
Yeah.
experience, if you
Yeah,
don't
for me,
mind.
it was just kind of like really cut off. Like I
Mm,
was always very, since I was little, very sexual. And what I meant, it was
mm,
like I was very exploratory. I was very in my
mm,
body. I was very just
mm,
exploring life and myself with all the
mm,
things. And then because I feel like there were many moments, being in this industry and the entertainment industry, I got
mm,
shamed for that. I got
mm,
men that came at me in a certain way and they blamed me
mm,
because I was a sexual person. Not that I
mm,
was doing anything. One of them said, it's
mm.
just the way you walk and the way you move. And I
Right.
was like, and so it felt like many things were telling me it is unsafe to just be who I
Mm,
am. And who I am is just alive and sexual, and
mm,
it was very unsafe. So that started sort of like closing me off. And then
mm,
physically, what happened is that my cortisol went up into the
mm,
sky because I was overworking myself. I was just
mm,
having so many thousands of jobs and like, being in the hustle and the bustle. And like, yeah, I felt very powerful. I always say, like, hello, my name is Virginia and I'm addicted to cortisol because, like, it's just like in the moment, it just feels like I'm powerful. I can do anything.
yeah.
I can do absolutely everything. Is that adrenaline, that makes us like lift off cars and
Mm,
like do the thing. But they're just only supposed to be in the body for a little period of time, not through your
mm,
whole. And so
mm,
with that, my liver was overworking because the liver sort of kind of detoxifies and
mm,
then my hormones were all over the place. And then that took a dive into physically, emotionally, and everything about my sexuality kind of just like I pushed it down. And I
mm,
was married by then, and it was really hard, really, really hard time for a relationship
mm,
because our relationship started being really met in the sexuality of it. And
mm,
then when we didn't have that, he was like, what's happening? And I didn't know
mm.
what was happening. I couldn't
Right.
answer. I was just like, I just don't feel like it. And I was like,
Mm.
it's not you. You can put me Brad Pitt in front of me and I'll be
Yeah,
like, I could
yeah,
care less. Like, I just don't think
yeah.
nothing is exciting. And the thing is, when I shut that part off, my life felt shut off as well. Like my life
Right.
started feeling flat. I felt like, Groundhog's Dog, that like everything
Mm,
was the same all the time. I was too tired to do anything but the things that I had to do, like show up for work, come home. I will just
mm,
like numb myself with TV,
mm,
numb myself with food, and then do it all over again. And I would
mm,
certain be outside a little bit, but I just didn't feel safe in my body,
mm,
So it was this rediscovery of like, who am I? What sexuality is really? And so I did a 2.5 year certification of a tantra. And I did it
mm,
first just for myself. I was like, okay, like I'll take whatever right now. Like, I don't
mm,
know. And it was the discovery of like sexuality is not just about sex. It's how I live my life. It
mm,
is beyond sex. It is not just the act of sex, it's the act of connection, is the act of connection through everything and everything that I do, like eating or creating, right? Like I
Mm,
make love to the universe consciously, and I get pregnant by ideas and
mm,
movies and, you know, short films and stories, and I get birth to them in that way. But if I
mm,
shut down my sexuality, which is where my creativity is, then there is
mm,
no creativity coming through because there's no making love to the creation of life in reality. So when I shut that off because some people were threatened by it, or because
mm,
I decided to live in the masculine without leaning into the feminine, which for me, the feminine was the way I grew up was subservient and negative in a sense. And I was like,
mm,
no, I related to my father. And I was like, my father works all
mm,
day, every day, and I'm going to do the same
mm.
thing. And that's the only way that you get things done. And I wasn't getting anywhere, honestly. I was just like,
Yeah.
paying bills, and that's the way it was. And when I finally got into the space, that's when the movie was coming through, and when, like, you
Mm,
know, my relationship changed because it wasn't about sex. It was, let's
mm,
connect, let's have eroticism through our whole day. You know, it could be like just
mm,
a kiss and making out and stopping at that. It doesn't have to be
mm,
we're making out to then have sex. It was just
mm.
like, I just want to make out with you, and then I'm going to go grocery shopping.
Yeah,
But, you
yeah.
know, it's like, but then living in this turn on of life has allowed me
Mm,
to create from that space, and then living in
mm,
a very just somatic, sensual, sensorial experience where I am really in my senses and I can
mm,
really create and connect with people and anybody from that space. And that has made changed my life because now I feel
mm,
alive again.
mm.
And so it has definitely been a beautiful. And then people started being like, what did you do? And I got certified, but I was like, no, I'm an actor, I'm not going to do that. And then my friends are like, no, you have to teach us what you did, because they started seeing the
The
difference. And so I
change,
started
yeah.
doing like little groups of my friends, and then they were recommending me to more
Mm,
people, and it kind of started growing. And so right now I feel like there's a hole in the Spanish market with that, because
mm,
people don't talk about that, because sexuality and sex is such a taboo. And so
mm,
I sort of do more of in Mexico. I teach in prisons
mm.
in Guadalajara, and I then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna join them both, because I feel like they are creative energy. Like they're one in one. Like I don't have to separate myself into them. I
I
can.
love that. Yeah, and because I agree. I think like spirit and creativity, it's like they're the same thing. Like they come from the same place. And yeah, I think I really resonate with like both of those passions. And yeah, I always struggled with like feeling like I need to choose from one to the other. Like I always knew when I was really young that I had this like affirmation, which was my creations inspire people all over the world. And I didn't know what the creations were, but I knew I was passionate about mysticism and all of that. But yeah, to me, it's like it is the two together, you know?
They come from one thing. And I love that you said in your
Mm,
book, if we can talk a little bit about this,
mm,
where you lost a baby,
yeah.
and at the simultaneously you had a kind of been creating like the mystery
Life.
school
Yeah,
and
yeah.
life, and like all these things that were like in sync with
Mm,
each other. And how was that
mm,
experience? Because I think that you had
mm,
such beautiful insights of getting pregnant with life and giving birth
mm,
to children,
mm,
and then losing one child, and
mm.
also getting pregnant with an idea that
Yes, it's
you
so
birthed
true.
it into the world.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I had had my son and we got pregnant again. We were in Australia and you don't know this, but like you were actually there around the same time. So what happened was we were meant to, the job that we were recruiting for, it was very unexpected that we needed to, someone who was going to come back from maternity at the very last minute couldn't. And it was over Christmas from memory. So it was kind of like we had all the interviews lined up, we had a holiday planned, and we were in Australia with friends. And then I woke up on Christmas Day and discovered that I was like bleeding. And then I found out very soon after that that I was going to lose the baby. And everything was closed. And so we were told to just go home and just wait for it to pass. And if it doesn't, by X date, go to the hospital. And so we were just waiting, right? Just waiting, knowing. And yeah, it was just for me, it was this really incredible, mind blowing fact of like having one moment life in me, like the biggest promise of life, and then the next moment death. Like these two great mysteries literally in my body. And what? And anyway, so we didn't know when the baby would pass. So we had all the interviews planned. And so Craig and I were like, okay, let's go ahead with them. And then you can just not go to them if you don't feel all right. But we were also like, it might not happen for a couple of days or whatever. Anyway, it was when I was on the phone with you that my contractions began. And my experience of it was because I felt your energy, your aliveness. And there was something about you and I connecting, and my body relaxed. And yeah. And then I don't know if you remember, but I actually left
Yeah, yeah,
the
I do, I do.
interview
Yes, yes.
because I was like, it's happening now. Yeah. So you were literally there when it was happening, which
Wow,
is
that is
so bizarre.
wild.
I've always
That's
been like,
wild.
I need to tell Virginia that one day.
That
But
is so
anyway, there we go.
wild.
And so, yeah, and so that obviously like is a very complex thing to go through in many ways. It was very physical as well as like, hormonal and then just emotional because, it's just the loss. Anyway, so my husband, Craig, he was working in my company at the time, and we were in Australia, and I knew I wanted to create a mystery school, but I never could quite land the structure of it. Like I couldn't quite see how, like what the 9-month journey was going to be. And I knew it was a 9-month journey. And then when I was there soon after the miscarriage, all of a sudden I got the structure of the mystery school. And then my best friend, who Amy Firth, she happened to be there. And so she's like, yeah, let me be part of it. So we hired her. And the three of us really devoted ourselves for literally the next 9 months in creating the mystery school. And it was so interesting because it felt like that creative energy. And I don't know if it was mental creative energy or physical creative energy. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was within me and it was definitely within Craig, where we gathered up that energy that I think was reserved to like nurture the child that we lost, and it went into the mystery school. It was amazing, and literally it was like 9 months, and I do believe that we like it was that creative life force energy that was kind of like redirected to create the mystery school. Yeah.
So beautiful. So hard all at the same time.
Mm, mm,
It's like I cannot imagine what it is to going through the
mm,
process of life and death and within one, and how of an initiation that is to
mm,
just to
mm,
hold both things at the same time. And I remember it was
mm.
during COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was during COVID, exactly. We were like the last ones to go through quarantine in Australia. It was like,
Right,
oh, it
right.
was so full on. But it was interesting as well. So the day that I lost my baby, so it was Christmas Day, literally. When I ended up getting pregnant soon after, a few months after, and the due date of that baby, my daughter, was the exact same day. And so for me, it was like there was something about what we created in that time. And then also it felt like almost like a confirmation that she had returned, like as if it was, yeah. So it was like, what a mystery that is.
What a beautiful mystery. It's like the mysteries of life that we cannot fully comprehend, I feel like,
Mm,
that we can
mm,
tap into them and then we can have like
yeah,
closeness to it. But it is just like like we are being guided in such a way. And you
totally.
talk so much about two things that I love. For first off, you talk about the Great Mother
Mm,
and all the goddesses that have helped you within the journey. But
mm.
who is the Great Mother to you?
To me, the great mother, like great cosmic mother, is like a few different things. She is like the feminine aspect of God. And she's also the earth and the cosmos herself. But then she's also like the original mother, like mother of us all. So she's kind of all of those things to me.
Being held by her and
Mm,
like just in the way, like when we connect to the feminine, because I think that there's always a point in a woman's life in this
mm,
time where we were kind of forced into the masculine and to
yeah,
entering into the job force. To me it makes a lot of sense that
yeah.
we lost the feminine, because to enter into the job force we had to be in the masculine to be taken
Mm,
seriously in a sense. And so I
mm,
feel like there's always a point where we have to return to the feminine.
mm,
And I don't think only women, I think men
mm.
as well.
Yeah.
and to connect with that essence of like the great mother, that we all are birthed
Mm,
from this, feminine energy as well. And that
mm,
it is not separated from who we are or how we do life, right?
totally.
You say change is the only constant, which I love.
Mm,
What have you fully kind of, because I think that like that is one of the hardest
mm,
lessons for people, because we want everything to stay the same. And yet we
totally.
are looking forward new adventures. But the moment that things change, whether that is a separation, whether there is like a job, like a hometown, or people passing, we
Mm,
just cannot, we're not kind of prepared for it. What do you think was your biggest lesson when it comes to like change is the only constant? And do you think that you're
mm.
able to live in that now more easily?
I wouldn't say I find change easy because I think change is hard for everyone. I think that what I've the way I've come to live, and I think it's because also we don't have an option,
Yeah.
is to realize that like a perfect example is like, with the full moon, the new moon, Mercury in retrograde, it's Venus in retrograde as well, with us talking, all these kind of things. It's easy to kind of look to the stars or whatever part of our life, like as if like this thing is happening to us. And, same thing could exist with like losing a job or someone rejecting us or whatever. Like nature for me is like the biggest teacher in all this. So like if we look at like the cosmos, like cosmic energy right now, we know this year is like hectic and hardcore. And the reframe that I think is helpful for us is to realize that we're not separate from nature, and the nature is in the stars as well. So these changes that are happening aren't happening outside of us and affecting us. They're happening all within all of us, and that there is this intelligence within all of us, this aliveness within all of us. And the moment you kind of cling or shut down, or we are just talking about that, if you opt out of the aliveness, and aliveness is death. Aliveness is loosening your grip, the grief, the sorrow, that's aliveness. If we just try and stay in the everything's just fine, and I just want to be happy all the time, and of course we all just want to be happy all the time, but if we ignore the truth of the aliveness of life, we get stuck, we get separated off from life. And so for me, it's like we have no choice. There's no choice but to embrace the change if we want to feel fully alive. And because I love this lesson I've learned around grief is actually evidence of how much we love. Oh, it's so true. It's so true. And I wish it wasn't true because, let's
We
just
all just want
be
to be happy.
exactly. But it's just not the law of the earth. And
No.
so either we accept it or we don't.
But we don't, and we disconnect ourselves, like
Mm,
you said, is like
it's a
part of the
disconnection.
aliveness. It
Yeah.
is a disconnection of living a human experience, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we came here for.
Right.
And I always said to, my clients, I'm like, I understand that we don't want to feel pain, but when we
Mm,
close off to life, it's not like we can open ourselves for happiness and excitement and orgasmic life, and then
mm,
closing ourselves fully from pain and grief and all the things. It's like it's the same
mm,
ball, it's the same, like it's the same space. So whether you have it closed or open, it's like up to you. But when you have it open, you are feeling it all, and you kind of
mm,
have to, and you just gather yourself with tools that allow you to have more of a soft landing into the things, so that
mm.
you're not crashing into it like every time.
Yeah.
But
So
I do
true.
that with my relationship. We said that we have killed our relationship at least 6 times. And
Mm-hmm.
it has been a death of like something is not working anymore. So something has
Mm,
to change. And when you change something, everything kind of shifts, right? And there's a period of time where we both feel awkward and weird and like
mm,
disconnected and like, I don't know, are we gonna get through this? This feels like
mm,
dangerous territory because we don't feel connected or excited about each other. But then on the other side, we still are like trying to weave a new thing. And it's an awkwardness. It's like, I don't know how this is going to work, right? But on the
Mm,
other side of that, when we have reached the, and every time we have so far,
mm,
we have found a depth that we hadn't found before. It's a new depth
yes.
because yeah, you go through the grief, you go through the fear of like everything is changing. And yes, these
Yeah.
other things were working, but when something changed, sort of everything kind of shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And embracing that uncomfortableness and embracing the uncomfortable
Mm,
conversations and embracing the sitting down with not only him, but friends and being like,
yeah.
so this isn't working. Like, what do we do? Let's switch. Let's move things.
Yes. I think that's so important information to share because it's like, yeah, I think people can feel a bit like ashamed of their relationship or ashamed to admit different things or, but yeah, it is. I so resonate with you around like, it's like having several different relationships with the same person, but like you have to allow that old relationship to die in order for the evolution to come, and that's just so scary. And I think it's the same within ourselves as well, these I'm definitely in perimenopause now, and I can feel how the physical symptoms are kind of like, I'm seeing how they're like somehow burning up within me these old ways of being that can't come through if I'm going to say yes to the initiation. And yeah, I think the same with relationships and then our relationship with ourselves as well. Yeah.
Because there are
Mm,
initiations into something,
mm,
else that could be bigger or it can be deeper or it can be whatever.
mm.
Because sometimes we expect this soul journey, right, to be all like expansive and big and like
Yeah.
I'm a new person and my relationship is amazing. And it's
Yeah.
not like sometimes I feel like that is the way that it's perceived, like on social media, when
Mm,
it comes down to like what it is to have, a
mm,
Kundalini awakening, a soul awakening, a
mm,
soul, like rearranging of your relationship. It's
mm.
messy because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're humans. So,
Yeah.
what are some tools that you have gathered yourself? I know the way that you say journaling, which is soul inquiry, which is always like, has been my favorite. I was just like, oh my God, soul inquiry. Yes. But it just felt so good. I never heard it like that before. And it was just so beautifully put. And you put it in your books as well, which I
Mm,
love
mm,
that every kind of chapter has a soul inquiry that you're like,
mm,
think about this.
mm,
How is it writing? Obviously, you're a writer, but how is
mm.
the act of writing a tool for you that has worked?
Yeah, yeah. So I writing is my go-to for sure. And I think like soul inquiry or journaling, it's like a different type of writing to creative writing. But when you're journaling continuously, creative writing probably comes. But you're not sitting down to try and write. For me, yeah, I've always been someone who has a lot of things going around in my head. And so I think at first it's really helpful to empty that out. And yeah, particularly if you're busy and you're holding a lot of stuff, just empty it out onto the page. And then, you've probably read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. She talks about morning pages. I love that as a practice. So she says for morning pages, three pages in the morning or whatever you choose, and you're just writing continuously. And she really taught me how to hold space for the head to come through and then God to come in, or whatever, your soul, whatever you believe in. And that is my practice. It's not just channeling. I am a channel. I channel. It's something that I've always done, but for me, the personal practice is about emptying the head out so that I can be a clear channel as well. So it kind of helps me with my creativity, but I'm not doing it to be creative. I think that's the thing that I've learned is really important, because sometimes when I get busy and I've got a big project on, I might just try and like do it to get to an end result, but I need to make sure I'm doing it for myself first. And if I do that, the channel will end up being open. So yeah, it's a kind of, I don't know if you feel the same, like where
Yeah,
you're
no,
kind of
I
practicing
love
to get an outcome versus,
100%.
yeah.
And I think a lot of sometimes we can use spirituality that way, right? It's like,
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna do this in order to get this
To get
manifestation,
that.
right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yes.
It's like, I will meditate in order to manifest this, you know? And it's like,
Exactly.
it's not,
No,
that's
it's about
not,
connection,
yes.
aliveness. Yeah,
If
yeah,
you
yeah.
connect and if you embody the thing, the thing will come, but you
Mm,
cannot fake embodying the thing.
mm,
If you keep chasing the thing and you're only doing the stuff to get more things,
mm.
then you get lost in the just chasing
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
the manifestation or the things that you want, right? And so it's like,
Mm,
and where sometimes I feel like that's our society kind of works that way. If you do this, then you get this, right?
yeah.
But it is not like you do this for you. And what is the end
Yes.
result? Feeling freaking better. Like, you know, it's just
Yes.
like
So
being
true.
more embodied in your body, like being
Yes.
yourself. Like that's the end result. And then things will come, but you're not doing it for a special thing to come
Yes,
through.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I have one more question. Well, actually, I have just two quick work questions. You say the only way out is through.
Mm,
So if somebody's going through it right now with a deep,
mm,
deep dark night of the soul,
mm.
what do you recommend them to do? What would be one
Uh-huh.
thing that they can start
So
doing?
I think just like if you can just find a name or a visual of something you believe in. So it might be a name of God or goddess, or it might be your soul, or it might be maybe your mum who passed over, or it could be like in my case when I went through a really difficult period, there was a particular chant and mantra that I would say, Om Namah Shivaya, which to me is I honor my true self, and it just helped me. And so saying something like that when you feel like you're kind of losing your way a little bit, just repeating it over and over again. And you can choose like a sacred word, for example, like holds a particular frequency to anchor you back into, whether you call it the light, God, your soul. And so I would say that. And then I think the other thing I would say is like, again, based on what you believe, but I believe in the soul, and that the soul came here to grow and learn, and that it is available to guide us at all times. And so any way that you can connect in with that. So you might be like, what's my soul calling me to do today? And it might just be have a bath, or it might be call Virginia, or it might be go for a walk on the beach. Like keep it bite-sized, keep it little, but imagine like this golden thread through your life. And yeah, this period that you're in, it's like dark and it's difficult, but these periods, it's like, when you are in the death, with the decay, the womb, like it feels like nothing will grow again in the winter, but it really, really will, if you really push yourself through it and just trust, hold on, find some kind of anchor to keep you through it, and through time it will change.
Try to chew the whole cake.
Yeah, God, no.
The little things in those moments are so, yeah, absolutely. My last question to you is the question that I ask everybody at the end of the podcast, which is, what is an orgasmic life to you?
I would say it's one where you feel free. So, like the opposite of trapped. Like any part of you that feels trapped, you're kind of like, okay, what would make me feel free right now? Yeah.
Make me want to like take my clothes off and run into the field.
So good.
I love that. Well, thank
Love
you
it. Thank
so
you so
much for being
much.
in this podcast. Thank you so much for your wisdom and everything that you put into the world. And
Thank you,
because everything that you're
Virginia.
putting into the world is making the world better. We need voices like you. We need women like you speaking these beautiful things in this most poetic ways. You're such a beautiful writer.
Mm,
And the words that I hear you say or I read from you, they're so deeply connected in a creative and creation and a soul way that is
mm.
just so beautiful to receive. So thank you for getting pregnant with these ideas and birthing them to the world, because I know the birthing process, it's also intense and birthing something
Yeah, it really
creative,
is.
you know?
Well, you know it. Thank you, Virginia, and thanks for your creativity in the world as well.
Appreciate. Thank you, everybody. Please, I'm going to put everything where you can follow Rebecca in the show notes. Please follow her everywhere. Buy all the books, buy all the cards. You really are not going to regret it. It's like the most amazing thing that you will ever buy. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.